Marco Rubio putting out a tweet and again with the caption, "Kill the Boer." Why is he prompting this once again, particularly on the back of the expelled ambassador?
That aspect of frustration by the United States with South African foreign policy, South Africa taking Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu to the ICJ on charges of war crimes and the allegations that the South African government was making at the ICJ. The primary biographical information about Brent Bozell that South Africans will digest, I think, is his proximity to and alliance with Israel. That's going to become an issue, but also
Guys, it almost appears as though the Americans, Donald Trump's regime, just really want to turn up the heat in the fight that it's actually going on right now between South Africa and the US. So there's a new nomination by Donald Trump for the ambassador of the United States to South Africa, whose name is Leo Brent Bozell III, which many people, commentators have been seeing across the media find really, not disturbing. Disturbing wouldn't be the right word, but really creating a lot of tension, because especially as you would hear from this newsroom analyst based in the US, it's argued that Leo Brent Bozell III is of the conservative order of one of the highest levels, and he's a Christian conservatist. He's been writing a lot of articles about, left-wing use of media and all of that. And he has a really firm allegiance to Israel. And in this analysis, we would also learn that even Marco Rubio as well, and both of them actually have this firm allegiance. And Marco Rubio actually, I think 4 days ago in a tweet, actually had this on his X handle where he criticized the EFF's performance again of the Kill the Boer song at the last human rights celebration speech by the EFF and the leader of the EFF, Julius Malema. He says, "Kill the Boer is a chant that incites violence. South Africa's leaders and politicians must take action to prevent Afrikaner and other disfavored minorities. The United States is proud to offer those individuals who qualify for admission to our nation amid this continued horrible threat of violence." And so this comes in light of, Julius Malema's performance of the whole Kill the Boer song, and a lot of commentators have actually been speaking about it. One of your favorite guys I see on your comments, Ike Kumalo, actually was arguing in a video. I think I'll make a video on that one, saying that, the whole thing with chanting Kill the Boer still keeps the poor people's bank accounts still in the red, so to speak. This is actually metaphoric, arguing that, that people can actually chant Kill the Boer from now till tomorrow, but if they do not understand basic economic principles and all of that, how to make economics work for them, the poor will still remain poor. A lot of commentaries I've been seeing on the media anyway, critiquing the whole presentation by the EFF and all of that. And in light of all of this, with Marco Rubio slamming the whole Kill the Boer, Marco Rubio also really, highlighting the fact that South Africa's diplomatic relationship with the US is really tanking really fast. There's now a shocking twist to that whole debacle, which is the fact that the Palestinians themselves in Gaza are actually now protesting against Hamas in Palestine. Now, for me, this was a really big shocker. And I saw this report on Sky News Australia, where they actually show and argue how the Palestinians are now really turning against the Hamas fighters who were supposedly fighting for them, so to speak, against Israel, and knowing fully well that South Africa actually had to take Israel to the International Court of Justice, as in what it argues is a kind of like a genocide against the Gazans in Palestine. Now Palestinians are fighting Hamas and trying to kick Hamas out of Palestine, according to this news report. And how South Africa would react to that is really, not so sure. But let's quickly listen to this report quickly on how the Palestinians are turning their back against Hamas. And I'll be back for a few thoughts before the video.
Palestinians are uprising against Hamas. Extraordinary footage has emerged from Gaza today showing thousands of Palestinians marching through the streets and chanting, calling for an end to the terrorist group's rule of the region. Palestinian civilians have finally realized the evil of Hamas, shouting "Hamas are terrorists" down the streets. But we haven't seen any of this footage on mainstream media outlets, with this commentator saying, "Before posting this video, I waited 14 hours for BBC and Al Jazeera to air it. They refused. Why? Because it shows Gazans furious at Hamas terrorists using their hospitals as shields, chanting loud and clear, 'Hamas are terrorists.' Yes, that supports Trump's plan to crush the Muslim Brotherhood forces in Gaza. And to the clueless protesters in New York and London, do you still think you understand the Middle East? Think again. Israel and the Arab people now stand side by side against the rapists, the radicals, and the lies." And this commentator agreed, saying, "Massive crowds of Palestinians have taken over the streets of northern Gaza, chanting, 'Down with Hamas. We've had enough, Hamas.'" I dare the New York Times or Mehdi Hassan to report on this. The leftists who have dedicated their lives since the harrowing events of October 7, 2023 to supporting Palestine are turning a blind eye to the uprising because it does not suit their agenda anymore. Commentator Avi Yemeni said mass protests against Hamas sweep Gaza and the West Bank as Palestinian support for the terrorist collapse. Spare a thought for Western jihadists, leftists and woke right fringes reeling from this betrayal. Free Palestine from Hamas. The display of abandon against Hamas is refreshing, but many are not buying it. This commentator said, "Hundreds of Gazans are protesting against Hamas, waving white flags, calling for the end of the war. Does anyone believe them, or is this far too late?" And this commentator agreed, saying, "I'm here to remind everyone that Gazans didn't protest against Hamas on October 7th because they were busy spitting on our dead bodies, hitting them with sticks and parading them on the streets while chanting Allah Akbar. Oh, never forget, oh, never forgive." Meanwhile, in the US, progressives continue to support Hamas by flying their flag outside the White House and denouncing Israel.
Our position in the Imperial Court grants us immense privilege to escalate against the Zionist entity and its lapdogs. Any repercussions we may face pale in comparison to resisting a genocide. As people of conscience, we must not forget the sacrifices our people have made. We must honor the valiant people of Gaza through our actions, and we vow to do more than just reject the imperialism our universities are so entrenched.
But the Trump administration isn't budging. The Deputy Special Envoy for the Mideast, Morgan Ortagus, blasted Hamas and the hell it is putting Palestinians through.
President Trump has been very clear about this. He's threatened them more than once. He told them there would be hell to pay. And at some point, they have to want to save their own people more than they want to kill Israelis. And right now, not just right now, but in general, Hamas, since their founding, they only care about death and destruction. You know, these are people that don't care if they lose their own women and children. They don't mind using innocent people as human shields. It's really disgusting and sad to see for the innocent people that are victims to this awful terrorist regime, and it can't be allowed to continue.
Yeah, so for me, I think this is a really complicated one because I don't know really how this whole thing, especially now with the expulsion of Ibrahim Rasool, South Africa's ambassador to the US, as a persona non grata. Now, another shocking twist to this whole thing is now President Trump's nomination of this guy, Leo Brent Bozell III. And in this report, we'll be hearing how this analyst argues that Brent Bozell is actually, a very firm supporter of Israel and Israeli issues and all of that. And having him as a nominee by Trump to South Africa is a statement. I think it's a statement Donald Trump is actually giving to South Africa, saying, okay, you expel this guy since we expelled your guy, and then let the war begin. This is how I'm beginning to read the whole thing. And it's really, really unfortunate where South Africa has found itself at this time in history, because according to Moletsi Mbeki, he says that there's no kind of war that South Africa will fight with the US and win. Let's quickly really listen to this guy break down why and how Leo Brent Bozell III might be problematic as Donald Trump's nominee for ambassador to South Africa, and why Marco Rubio seems to be turning up the heat in this diplomatic tension with between South Africa and the US, especially as regards the whole kill the Boer. And I'll be back for my final thoughts.
Let's talk about the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, because he has been focusing on South Africa quite intently. The 24th of March, I think that was about a day ago, Simon, putting out a tweet, and again with the caption, "Kill the Boer." Give us the context here. Why is he prompting this once again, particularly on the back of the expelled ambassador returning to South Africa?
Yeah, well, I think it is off the back of that, but it's also off the back of some intemperate language that has been reported by Breitbart News and others, that have been used by some in South Africa. Marco Rubio plugging away at what is very much his ongoing criticism of South Africa in that tweet, saying, "Kill the Boer is a chant that incites violence. South Africa's leaders and politicians must take action to protect Afrikaner and other disfavored minorities. The United States is proud to offer those individuals who qualify for admission to our nation amid this continued horrible threat of violence." I mean, that tweet only underscores the fact that the bilateral relationship between the United States and South Africa is in so much difficulty. And you are absolutely right to make the point, Golly, that the South African government will have to decide whether it is going to accept the nomination of Brent Bozell as the next US ambassador. One of the things that we know about him, like Marco Rubio and like Donald Trump, is that Mr. Bozell is absolutely committed to being a steadfast, vocal supporter of and ally to Israel. And on this particular announcement, this confirmation that Brent Bozell is being named the next US ambassador to South Africa, you know, that aspect of frustration by the United States with South African foreign policy, South Africa taking Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu to the ICJ on charges of war crimes and the allegations that the South African government was making at the ICJ, that has stuck in the craw of the Trump administration to exactly the same degree as these false claims that President Trump and Marco Rubio make about the Expropriation Act in South Africa. So it's interesting that the primary biographical information about Brent Bozell that South Africans will digest, I think, is his proximity to and alliance with Israel. That's going to become an issue. But also it's important to underscore that Brent Bozell has a long history here in Washington, D.C., of being a pretty far-right conservative before Donald Trump ever came along and revolutionized far-right conservatism. For a long while here, he ran an outfit called the Media Research Center, that particularly from a conservative and Christian perspective would point out what it claimed were biases in media coverage here and misinformation in media coverage here. And you can hear the echoes of all of those arguments in much of what Donald Trump says about the media disposition in the United States. So there's a connection between Brent Bozell and that tweet by Marco Rubio, and it's the connective tissue that ties them together in terms of their steadfast support for Israel.
Simon Marks, thank you very much.
Yeah, so in trying to really analyze this whole thing, guys, I think that at the end of the day, for us anyway in Nigeria, it was quite unfortunate that, not unfortunate, probably fortunate that we didn't really experience this kind of a history of settlers, so to speak. And so it might be a challenge to really understand what both the blacks and the coloreds and the whites in South Africa are going through. But at the end of the day, I think leadership is the key. You see, and now I'm beginning to really understand the weight of the kind of leadership Nelson Mandela brought to South Africa, because I think that's the only way to manage such a system that has been established this way. And Africa, I don't think Africa can really cope with a broken South Africa, a seceded South Africa, or South Africa that loses its self-identity. South Africa has the largest GDP contribution to the world, to the continent, and has a lot of fine entrepreneurs, although many have left South Africa. There's a lot of these whole racial challenges in what is supposed to be a non-racial space, and all of that. And at the end of the day, I just think that the leadership has to stand. If not President Ramaphosa, there has to be a leadership that would rise up to really foster unity and equality and try to really fight with wisdom to address the challenges and the cries of the multiracial groups that actually make up the state. Otherwise, this whole thing will keep on reproducing itself. And in Nigeria, for example, we really have these issues as well. But it doesn't have a sort of like a racial, so to speak, a turn to that. It's mostly within the confines of the ethnic, all right? It's mostly within the confines of tribal differences, ethnic differences in the ways of seeing the world. And so we know that culminated in what was then called the Biafra War, but this was in 1967 when the Igbos in Nigeria decided that they've had enough of this union and they wanted to secede. A bloody war, I think it claimed almost more than 2 million lives, and at the end of the day, the Biafrans lost the war and were reunited back into the country. But we don't really want that for South Africa, because South Africa now brings a whole lot of racial twist into that. And you know, I've even read some books that said that they were mercenaries that actually came to Biafra from South Africa to fight because they thought that the Biafran cause was a just one, you see. And so I would think and I would argue that these mercenary kind of South Africans are still existent and, you know, would respond to such calls. And so we'll be seeing a much more terrible kind of, you know, a clash that doesn't just have one that has a certain kind of rights battle to it, but also a racial twist to it, and that's not what we really need in South Africa at the moment. So I'm really hoping that President Ramaphosa and probably some of the leadership in the ANC could actually see this divide. I don't really think that South Africa will be able to function in a white only or black only space, or, you know, that kind of power grab by blacks or whites only, but there has to be some form of unity, because this is the root, is the basis for which the nation came into nationhood. And to really abandon that to fight, we're just going to be seeing a whole lot of mess. So I hope, for me personally, I'm hoping that kind of leadership arises, because that's the only way I see this. It's a whole lot of mess. When you listen to Clement and Craig battle it out in this interview, bro, for me, even as an African, I'm shocked. Most West Africans don't know all of this. And I'm hoping that probably one day I would actually do a podcast with it. Maybe Clement or some of these more guys. Kwazami will be turning more into a more podcast kind of space, so that we really understand these perspectives deeper. And the kind of questions I'll be bringing forward will be questions from an outsider perspective to really deepen the discussions and understand the weights of the cries that the hearts of the blacks, the whites, the Indians, and the coloreds are really crying for a successful nation to emerge out of the decadence South Africa seems to be becoming. But anyway, I don't know. What do you guys think about this interview? Share your thoughts, guys, in the comments.